Fun, that is the title, has been our golf classic. And thank you to so many of you in the room who play, who sponsor, who contribute to this important event. Who knows the date of that golf tournament? Who can name it? September 18th, so Wednesday after the 17th, which is our regular Rotary meeting. So September 18th, I hope many of you will be out there. Now, however, to keep this fund really growing and sustainable for many, many years, because these are multi-year scholarships, each student receives a $1,500 annual scholarship that's renewable for 4 years. So 1,500 times 4 is, you don't know you're getting math lesson today, $6,000. So, and we award around 10 of these every year. $60,000 we need to keep putting back into our coffers. And we'd certainly love to be able to award more. So, to give every one of our Charlotte Rotarians, and every person really, an opportunity to support this important fund, we are announcing our 2013 Raffle Blitz to support our fund. Now, the tickets for the raffle, you get 1 for $10, but the bigger bargain, 3 for $20, 3 for $20, 3 for $20. Now, the drawing for this raffle will be at a meeting, but you do not have to be present to win. That's a great thing. So after you hear my little spiel, you may want to bring others into the fray and join in this. Now, all proceeds for the raffle do go to the scholarship fund. That's very important. So you are supporting, and you can be a part of this 9/11 scholarship fund. Okay? Now, what do you get? What are the prizes? The first prize is Julie Hack here. Could I ask her to stand up? Julie. Julie, of course, you all know Julie. Walk around, please, Julie. Donald Hack Diamonds. Julie is going to be sporting a lovely 17-inch sterling silver mesh necklace. Gorgeous, gorgeous. And thanks to Donald Hack Diamonds for donating that to us. That is one of the prizes. Thank you, Julie. Isn't she beautiful? That would look lovely around my neck. Absolutely. So that can be a prize. We have 2 more prizes. The next prize is a Belk $500 gift card. Thank you, Belk, and we are so pleased that they donated this. You can get that money. Okay, now, I have a special addition to that one. Don't go yet, John. Just been offered a gift certificate for $150 to the Charlotte City Club that we're going to combine with this Belk card and make it the ultimate dinner date. Do you not think so? For $650, okay? That's prize 2. The grand prize, and Ellen and Steve are sporting it, and they will be walking, they need help, because this is heavy. This is our Panthers versus Not So Rams Tough tailgate special. It is 4 club seat tickets, thanks to Bank of North Carolina, for the October 20th Panther game. You've got tailgate food. You've got a $50 Bojangles gift certificate. You've got 2 6-packs of microbrewery beer. You've got all kinds of chips and snacks items to make it a tailgate fun day. That package is $800. So 3 big, huge prizes. Now, thank you guys. Okay, so after this meeting, we will begin selling tickets. Did I say there were 3 for $20? They're 3 for $20. The more tickets you have, the more chances to win. 3 for $20. 3 for $20. Okay, after this meeting, we're going to start selling tickets. And we will be selling tickets at consecutive Rotary meetings up to and including the September 17th meeting where we'll have our final drawing. So, Bill, I see you getting money out of your pocket already. What do you have, Bill? Did I say there were 3 for $20? So how many 20s do you have?
5 20s.
Woo!
And I want the first 15 numbers.
Bill gets the first 15. You can get the next 15. Okay? All we're going to need is your name and phone number.
There's one right there. Just raise your hand.
Yay! Come see me after the meeting. We got to go. Thank you guys. Thank you very much for supporting this fund.
Thank you, Denise. And remember, this is for a great, worthy cause. These are our first responders, the people that protect us day and night. Well, you all have noticed there are a lot of barn hearts around. And because of that, I'm going to announce the head table ahead of time and do that right now. So to my right,
Thank you very much, John, and I am honored to be here. Friends that you got here out and respect so much. And I'm also very excited for the reason that I am here. It's been noted about this large crop of Barnharts that we have here today. And this is a family worthy of celebrating. As I look around and see this family assembled, I can testify, as so many of you can also testify, that this is an incredible, loving family. Also, it strikes me, as I look back into Charlotte history, and I've learned a lot about Charlotte history, that the impact that this family has had in our community over 3+ generations has made this community that we hold so dear a far better place. And in fact, my predecessor and my mentor, Harry Brace, who many of you know, used to have this saying, always remember who brought you to the dance. Well, you look back into Charlotte's, the great things of Charlotte and this region, and you can trace so many of those back to the Barnhart family, very much including Bill William M. Barnhart, that I'm here to talk about just for a few moments today. Recently, Bill was named to the YMCA Hall of Fame. This is a big deal. This is a truly big deal because in the entire history of the U.S. YMCA since 1851, only 128 leaders have been named for this recognition. And in fact, it should be also noted that the Harry Brace that I just mentioned, who loved this Rotary Club, very deeply committed to this Rotary Club, was the only other leader from Charlotte that has been named to the YMCA Hall of Fame. And it also should be noted as a side note that among so many leadership roles that Bill Barnhart had with the YMCA, that one of those was heading the search committee that brought Harry to Charlotte. One other side note you should know about Harry, because those who know, when Bill called him and he said, I'm from Charlotte, and remember this is about 1983, that he said, I'd like to talk with you about coming and leading our YMCA in Charlotte. Harry's first comment was, where's Charlotte? We always teased Harry that was not the best opening line for a search committee chairman. Bill is the first living non-Y professional to be named to the YMCA Hall of Fame. John D. Rockefeller is one of those that was named, but he was named to the Hall of Fame posthumously. Bill is being recognized for his leadership, not only with the Charlotte Y, but also with YMCA Blue Ridge Assembly. Some of you know it as the Conference Center in Black Mountain, North Carolina. It is now a thriving conference center. When Bill joined that board and that team, it was in dire straits. Now it is thriving. Bill served as a board member, as the chairman of that board, and as a trustee of that group for many decades now. Bill also served on our national YMCA board and served as the vice chairman of our national YMCA. Well, on July the 20th, just a few weeks ago, Bill was recognized at the National YMCA General Assembly, held only every 3 years, with 4,000 in attendance. And he stood with 5 others that were being named at that time to receive this award. This award will be permanently installed, placed in the YMCA Hall of Fame building at Springfield College in Springfield, Massachusetts. Knowing that Bill so loves and so committed to this Rotary Club, we wanted you to know of this award and also have the opportunity to lift up and celebrate Bill and his family. very much, John, and I am honored to be here. Friends that you got to our out and respect so much. And I'm also very excited for the reason that I am here. It's been noted about this large crop of barn hearts that we have here today. And this is a family worthy of celebrating. As I look around and see this family assembled, I can testify, as so many of you can also testify, that this is an incredible, loving family. Also, it strikes me, as I look back into Charlotte history, and I've learned a lot about Charlotte history, that the impact that this family has had in our community over 3+ generations has made this community that we hold so dear a far better place. And in fact, my predecessor and my mentor, Harry Brace, as many of you know, used to have this saying, always remember who brought you to the dance. Well, you look back into Charlotte's, the great things of Charlotte and this region, and you can trace so many of those back to the Barnhart family, very much including Bill William M. Barnhart, that I'm here to talk about just for a few moments today. Recently, Bill was named to the YMCA Hall of Fame. This is a big deal. This is a truly big deal because in the entire history of the U.S. YMCA since 1851, only 128 leaders have been named for this recognition. And in fact, it should be also noted that the Harry Brace that I just mentioned, who loved this Rotary Club, very deeply committed to this Rotary Club, was the only other leader from Charlotte that has been named to the YMCA Hall of Fame. And it also should be noted as a side note that among so many leadership roles that Bill Barnhart had with the YMCA, that one of those was heading the search committee that brought Harry to Charlotte. One other side note you should know about Harry, because those who know, when Bill called him and he said, I'm from Charlotte, and remember this is about 1983, that he said, I'd like to talk with you about coming and leading our YMCA in Charlotte. Harry's first comment was, where's Charlotte? We always teased Harry that was not the best opening line for a search committee chairman. Bill is the first living non-Y professional to be named to the YMCA Hall of Fame. John D. Rockefeller is one of those that was named, but he was named to the Hall of Fame posthumously. Bill's being recognized for his leadership, not only with the Charlotte Y, but also with YMCA Blue Ridge Assembly. Some of you know it as the Conference Center in Black Mountain, North Carolina. It is now a thriving conference center. When Bill joined that board and that team, it was in dire straits. Now it is thriving. Bill served as a board member, as the chairman of that board, and as a trustee of that group for many decades now. Bill also served on our national YMCA board and served as the vice chairman of our national YMCA. Well, on July the 20th, just a few weeks ago, Bill was recognized at the National YMCA General Assembly, held only every 3 years, with 4,000 in attendance. And he stood with 5 others that were being named at that time to receive this award. This award will be permanently installed, placed in the YMCA Hall of Fame building at Springfield College in Springfield, Massachusetts. Knowing that Bill so loves and so committed to this Rotary Club, we wanted you to know of this award and also have the opportunity to lift up and celebrate Bill and his family.
Thank you very much for bringing that to our attention. I think it's a wonderful, absolutely wonderful recognition of one of our members. One other interesting fact about Bill is he just turned, or he has been a member of this club as of last year for 50 years. Let's give another round. Let me make one quick announcement. Sheila Neisler, is Sheila here? Cowgirl, she came and left. The event that they had for Alzheimer's last Friday, they were hoping to raise $1,000. They may have thought they'd raise $5,000. They were hoping for that much. They ended up raising $10,000 and 250 people from North and South Carolina at that event. Congratulations to her and all of you all that went. Now, if I could, let me ask the following people to come forward. Paul Weich, Greg Walker, and Jerry Calter, and Mike Walker. These, with the exception of Mike who's coordinating it, but these three are your Kilimanjaro climbers for this year. Give them a round of applause. I wanted to recognize Mike because it is his efforts that make this happen. He has worked diligently for last year and this year, and there will be another crop of Kilimanjaro climbers going next year. Next year we have, I think, 25 or so going. So with that, I do have one present that I'm going to let Jerry take. The last flag that went up on Kilimanjaro, he is going to be taking it again, but he can't keep the 7-iron. And stay away from lightning storms.
But, you know, we were, the four of us, was in a golf tournament, but. We're going to be away.
Let's give him another round of applause. Let me also mention that their goal is to raise money. They each have to raise $3,000, and if you are so willing, all of the money goes to fight polio. So it's a really great cause. And I'm going to take a moment now and give you an update on polio. I have good news and I have bad news. You all remember 2 years ago, there were 4 countries that were endemic with polio. They had never been polio-free. And last year, we all celebrated when India became polio-free. 1 billion people became polio-free. That leaves 3 countries, Pakistan, Nigeria, and Afghanistan. Now, the bad news is we have had some outbreaks along the Horn of Africa, in Somalia and Kenya primarily. And we have outbreaks all the time, but usually there are less than a half dozen, 1, 2, 4, something like that. This is big. This is 108 cases in Somalia, 12 cases in Kenya, and as of last week, 1 case in Ethiopia. Now, I will tell you that, it's something to worry about, but Somalia has been polio-free twice. So we will beat it again in there. We're on the ground, and we will beat that. I know it's frustrating. It frustrates me. Sorry. It frustrates me. But you got to remember that the world has tried to eradicate 6 diseases across time. And we have been successful once. We eradicated smallpox in 1979. We began that effort in 1950. It took 29 years to get rid of it. When we went on the worldwide approach to getting rid of smallpox, there were 35 countries that had smallpox. When we started the polio pursuit, there were 4 times as many countries had polio and 8 times the populations. Plus, it was a disease that was mostly invisible compared to smallpox. It is a much tougher road to go down for the polio. Now, some good news is there's 3 types of polio, type 1, 2, and 3. As of 1999, we eradicated type 2. And I'm pleased to tell you, after 9 months ago, that we eradicated type 3. That leaves just type 1 left to do. Back in April, there was a summit in Abu Dhabi. World leaders assembled there, including Rotary, and the Global Polio Eradication Initiative presented the end game for polio. It's a 6-year plan. It is a $5.5 billion price tag. And that's a lot of money. But currently we spend close to $800, $900 million a year fighting polio now. So it's really in line with what we're doing now. Now the good news, in that event, in less than 45 minutes, those world leaders stood up and committed to over $4 billion of the $5.5 billion. And leading the way was the Gates Foundation. They committed to 1/3 of the cost, $1.8 billion. And they did that in a series of challenge grants, and Rotary is one of those. So for every dollar that you give to polio, for these guys to climb Kilimanjaro or to fight, you will make a good investment because Bill and Melinda are going to match you 2 to 1. So for every dollar, they'll put in 2. If Rotary raises up to $35 billion each year for the next 5 years, the Gates Foundation will put in $70 million to match ours. Now, the outbreaks are one thing, but I want to talk about the endemic countries that have never been polio-free. There's 3 of them, as I mentioned, and these are them. Inside the red box at the bottom, you'll see the total number of polio cases last year in 2012, 223. I want to contrast that with the number that we started with in 1988, 350,000 cases a year in 1988. So we have come a whole long way. If we look at each country and where they are today, Nigeria has had the most cases, and they're at 122, and to date, they have 43. If you extrapolate that out for the rest of the year, they're at 69, and that is a 44% reduction. Pakistan at 58 and only has 24 today will be a 35% reduction if they continue in this manner. And the best, in my opinion, in the war-torn country of Afghanistan, there were 37 cases last year, and this year there's only 4. That's an 84% reduction. So we are making great headway. We truly are this close to killing this disease. This disease that has haunted mankind for 4,000 years. And I hope you'll participate in that. Now I bring that up, I'm going to have 3 different series. This is the first of it that deal with the $1 million dinner that you may be aware of. Luther sent out an email to everybody telling you about that. This is a very large approach to fundraising. And I would like everybody to participate if they can. And there is a way for virtually everybody to participate on here. You'll recall when Mark Marcanda spoke about the foundation, he said once you put $10,000 into your will for Rotary, you will never miss it. I'll remember that quote forever. It was a great quote. So anyway, I hope that you'll participate. We'll be talking more about that later. But at the moment, I need to hand it over to our speaker. So let me ask Fred Brown to come up and introduce our speaker.
Thank you, President John, and please forgive my voice. My assistant said you sound like Barry White, and I asked her, I said, well, which team does he play for? I'm so pleased to introduce one of my colleagues, someone I met when he first came to Winston-Salem, Dr. John McConnell. Now think of these titles. He is the Chief Executive Officer of Wake Forest Baptist Medical Center. He's the Executive Vice President for Health Affairs, Wake Forest University, and is also a professor of urology at Wake Forest University School of Medicine. He has a bachelor's degree in chemistry and biochemistry with distinction from the University of Kansas, so he has a fond place in his heart, I'm sure, for Roy Williams. Until at least not so much lately. He got his medical degree, magna cum laude, from Loyola Stretch University School of Medicine. Dr. McConnell joined Wake Forest Baptist Medical Center in November 2008 after being named the medical center's first chief executive officer. The Wake Forest University Baptist Medical Center is composed of a fully integrated healthcare system, which is Wake Forest Baptist Health, Wake Forest School of Medicine, and Wake Forest Innovations. As CEO, he has overall responsibility for the medical center's research and commercialization. Some of these wonderful products and medications, they can actually go to market, education, and as well as patient care programs. The annual operating budget that he manages is in excess of $2 billion. He's a urologist by training and has done world-leading research in benign prostatic disease. He's published more than 100 peer-reviewed articles and over 10 books. He served on the advisory board of the National Institute of Health and was elected to the Institute of Medicine of the National Academy of Sciences in 2004. He received the Barringer Medal from the American Association of Genitourinary Surgeons and the full award from the American Urological Association in recognition of his contributions to the field of prostate disease. For those of us that are over 45, we really appreciate that, sir. He was elected to the North Carolina Institute of Medicine in 2012. Dr. McConnell serves on a number of boards in Winston-Salem, including the Chamber of Commerce. I guess one of the things that wasn't on his agenda, but we found out he's also a Rotarian. So I give you Dr. John McConnell.
Thank you, Fred, and greetings from Winston-Salem Rotary. It's great to be here. You know, there would have been an 11th book, Fred, but about 3 years ago I was asked by a publisher to write my first ever lay book, but the deal was I had to use the following title: How to Avoid Being Prostrate Over Your Prostate. I passed. I passed. You can never retire on book royalties as a nonfiction writer, I can tell you that. It is an honor to be here, and I will try in a very brief period of time to share with you mainly what I view the role of the country's roughly 100 academic medical centers are for both our country and for the world, but to call specific attention to some aspects of our mission that we think are very, very important for Western North Carolina. Let's see if I got this right. The title of my talk is really single mission, and no reason for you to be aware of this, but a lot of academic medical centers tend to talk about their three separate missions of patient care, research, and education that they try mightily to integrate somewhat after the fact. And one of the things that we did to really recalibrate the strategic direction of Wake Forest Baptist Medical about 4 years ago was to lead an entirely new strategic planning process, the conclusion of which was that if we reflect on what we're in business for, we're really in business for only one reason, and that's to improve health. But we do three really cool things in order to improve health, both here and literally around the world. Certainly patient care, but really what defines our business is the export portion of our business, because the new knowledge that we generate literally gets exported through publications and other approaches to improve healthcare often around the world. And of course, in the middle of all that, we're training the next generation of leaders in medicine, many of which wind up in your local community here in Charlotte. There's actually an official definition of an academic medical center, and briefly, it contains a school of medicine, which is a 4-year training program, the first 2 years of which are not too much different than university, and the last 2 years of which are very clinical. usually another school. That can be a graduate school, dental school, etc. For us, it's a graduate school of biomedical sciences. Either an owned health system, as we have, or a series of partnerships to provide clinical experiences for students and for clinical research, and a fairly substantial research base. So by that definition, there's slightly north of 100 academic medical centers in the United States. And they vary considerably, but one of their common features is actually tremendous economic benefit to their local communities. We provide about $3 billion a year of direct and imputed economic benefit to the triad, just from our institution. Some of you are probably familiar with aspects of our history. The medical school, which was called Wake Forest Medical College, started life in 1902 in what was then a very, very tiny town called Wake Forest, North Carolina. It's now a pretty big area. As a two-year medical school, which was very common in those days. But in the 30s, the Carnegie Foundation commissioned a study by a famous Dr. Flexner that largely labeled those two-year schools as trade schools. They were really not serving the needs of the public very well. And so there was a standard set that the curriculum had to be 4 years, and the 4 years had to be very intense clinical experience. And that was not going to be possible in Wake Forest, North Carolina in 1938. And so the leaders of Wake Forest University made a decision to move the medical school to Winston-Salem. That required very generous philanthropic support from the estate of Bowman Gray and from the Gray family in general. That's pretty well known. What is less well known is that Baptist Hospital, which had started life in Winston-Salem in the 20s, was too small a facility. So the Haynes family largely led a philanthropic effort to double the size of Baptist Hospital to make it more appropriate for a four-year medical school. And the new school opened in 1941. The next 60 years or so of history was frankly one of alternating decades of great progress, or maybe less than great progress, because you had the head of the hospital and the head of the academic enterprise. And if they saw eye to eye, there was great progress made. If they didn't see eye to eye, there was less than stellar progress made. And it was at the end of one of those less than ideal decades where the board of the university and the board of the hospital came together and declared that they really wanted to integrate things together. And so I arrived in November 2008, and we actually legally fully integrated the medical center in the summer of 2010. And I won't bore you with that, but just to briefly explain that, Wake Forest Baptist Medical Center is a nonprofit corporation that has two parents, Wake Forest University and North Carolina Baptist Hospital. Virtually all the governance authority for the medical center itself is transferred to a medical center board. That's the board that I report to. And it's essentially a joint operating company, and we're charged with managing all the assets of the medical center, the educational programs, patient care, research, and as you'll hear in a moment, our commercialization arms. As was mentioned in the introduction, there are three basically operating divisions, if you will, of the medical center. The medical school itself, which also contains a graduate school, a PA school, and some other programs. The health system, which I'll talk more about, and our commercialization company, which is called Wake Forest Innovations, which is sort of the new kid on the block that I'll refer to at the end of the presentation. As I mentioned, our annual operating budget is roughly $2 billion. Most of that, as you can see in the light blue there, about 3/4 of it essentially comes from direct patient care activities. The most important line on that slide is the third line. It's actually more than 2/3 of our total revenue comes from governmental entities. And this is one of the real challenges that organizations like us have, because basically our revenue is not determined by us. It's largely determined by what's going on with federal and state budgetary activities, which of course in these times are quite challenging. On the operational side, the darker blue there is salaries and wages, and we're in the people business, so it shouldn't be surprising to you that our single largest expense is in fact wages and salary. So it's very, very important, this is not an ego thing, but it's very, very important that an academic medical center have a first-class national reputation. And the reason for that is very simple, and that is the faculty, physicians, and researchers that we're recruiting. We're in competition with Harvard, with Caltech, with places like that, and in order to recruit and retain the very best talent, That's sort of a virtuous cycle to some degree. We have to make sure that our programs have very high level national reputations, and you get there by quality. You don't get there just by other approaches. So on the healthcare side, I think some key things I'll talk about in a minute is at least using News and World Report as a barometer of at least one degree of measurement on that overall national reputation. We're the only National Cancer Institute designated cancer center in the western half of the state. Major transplant programs in our local market. About 200 of the 600 or so physicians who are ranked amongst best doctors are actually our faculty members. We're very, very proud of our medical school. I got introduced to someone who's a grandson in our senior class. Wake Forest for many, many years, actually going back to the 40s, was regarded as one of the best medical schools in America to train doctors, the kind of doctors you would want to have take care of you, and that's a reputation we continue to enjoy today. Just a little bit more about the educational programs. We have roughly 125 students per year in each of these 4 years. The graduate school is fairly large. These are mainly PhD students, if you will, who are working in laboratories in areas like epidemiology and biostatistics, et cetera. We have some collaborations here in the Charlotte area in computer science, for example, with UNC Charlotte, and partnerships are really the name of the game in terms of research today. After medical school, you do additional training from 3 to 8 years, depending on what specialty you're going to go into. Those are residents and fellows. We have a fairly large stable of. We started the second PA program in the state. It's quite large. It's ranked about 9th in America right now. We're actually growing, and many parts of the state are underserved by PAs. We're just announcing a new branch in Boone, and we'll be announcing some other programs over the next few years. One of our closely guarded secrets is we have a very highly regarded hospital chaplaincy training program, and I would bet that many of your hospital chaplains in this community actually trained with us. It's quite famous, and it's been reorganized now under the leadership of Dr. Gary Gunderson, who some of you may know. Gary is the nation's leader in the intersection in faith and health. He actually was the founding director of the Carter Health Policy Center, moved to Memphis, where he created the Memphis model, as some of you may be familiar with, working with 300 African American churches in the greater Memphis area in a series of partnerships, largely with lay health advisors, showing over a period of time tremendous reduction in mortality, ED visits, hospital admissions, etc. And Gary's now in North Carolina. And one of the deals in recruiting Gary here, even though he works for Wake Forest, is that eventually that model we hope to see roll out through both North and South Carolina. There's already discussions with Duke and Down and others to do that in future years. I'm just in the interest of time skip through some of these other areas here. In terms of, I'm not actually a major fan of U.S. news, but it's just one measure that people are generally familiar with, and we were able to get a very, very substantial increase in our national rankings this last month, and these are driven. These are quantitative scores that are driven in 3 areas. One is true national reputation that is measured by physicians in a certain specialty nationally. A third is mortality rates, and the other third is a composite measure of quality, technology, a variety of other things that all get lumped together. We broke into the top 10 for the first time in nephrology and did very well in these 12 specialties. We're only 20 medical facilities in America that were ranked in 12 or greater specialties last month. But what we really like, and I hope there aren't any Blue Devils in the audience, is that we were only one below Duke in terms of state level rankings, in terms of the national rankings that drive that. But what we really like is we beat them in cancer for the first time. Also doing well in pediatrics, but frankly, your Levine program here in the Charlotte is exceptionally strong as well in these same rankings. On the healthcare side, we decided 3 years ago, those of you that may be familiar with the Winston-Salem geography, that we were completely landlocked on our 13 acres there in central Winston-Salem and had to get off the hill. And that strategy has 2 components. One is we were moving all of our new research programs to downtown Winston-Salem in an area that I'll show you in a moment. And we're moving all of our outpatient programs programs off of the Hill as well, out in the community to more user-friendly locations. Now, obviously, that'll be a decade-plus journey, but we began it about 3 years ago. Our newest major facility is actually at Bermuda Run. This actually, the first phase of this just opened this week. The hospital bed components will be added in 2017. This is the Highway 801 I-40 intersection. We're also opening in December a very large cancer facility, the first phase of which was outpatient several years ago. The inpatient beds are being added. It's basically where that break is. Everything on top of that is the new construction. This will be the only fully turnkey dedicated cancer hospital in North Carolina. And this houses all of our National Cancer Center Institute designations. And it's really a beautiful building. But our most beautiful building is an ambulatory building in Clemens, North Carolina. Designed by this guy. I want to switch gears now and talk about research, and I will say that, I often say that patient care is our most sacred mission, but our defining mission is really research because it is the absolutely unique activity that we engage in. Now, when I was in training and actually doing research, the way that we were all thinking about this is you started research in the laboratory, so think of an ed scientist, if you will, observation made, you take that observation into maybe some animal models, and then you test it ultimately in patients if it shows early promise. Well, research is going every which way now, and I'm going to give you 3 examples of research going in non-traditional directions. One going from clinical observations into the lab and back into patients, basic going from translation to clinical, and then the classic cycle as well. Our areas of research focus is kind of a busy slide, but I'll just mention the major ones. About 3 years ago, and I would say largely because of predicted declines in federal research funding, we decided to become very laser focused in where we were making new research investments. Before, the model was we would recruit, let's say, a leading scientist in a general area, let's say biochemistry, and we called it the solo athlete model. In other words, we hand them the ball and they can call any play they want to, but the problem is after 20 years, your science is kind of all over the place and it's not strategic. And so all of our new investments are very, very focused in disease areas like aging Alzheimer's, diabetes, obesity, cardiovascular disease, cancer, and the neurosciences. And a large part of the neurosciences also links back to Alzheimer's and cognitive decline with aging. Now, these areas were chosen because of existing strengths and talent that we could build upon, so we're not starting from scratch. Now, regenerative medicine, which as you may know is really one of our world famous programs under Dr. Tony Atala, is not in that box because all these things outside the inner circle we call supporting platforms. And so regenerative medicine is a set of tools that can be applied to many different diseases, heart disease, pancreatic disease like insulin production and diabetes. And so it's more of a technology than a particular area of science, and it's why it's listed that way. So let me just give you 3 very, very brief examples of the type of research that really uniquely occurs in academic medical centers. Dr. Lou Argenta and his colleagues, Lou is our former chair of plastic surgery and dealing a lot with poorly healing wounds in patients with diabetes and vascular disease. Tremendous problem, not uncommonly leading to amputation or even death. And they got very frustrated about this problem, not being able to make progress. And so they asked a simple question: what can we do around the environment of the wound to improve wound healing? These are clinicians, these are docs, right? So they take that question into the laboratory, this is now almost 15 years ago, and begin working on a variety of prototypes that created negative pressure. It's a very simple concept, negative pressure around the wound that literally pulls the edges of the wound together. And their technology became the wound vac, which today has over $1 billion of sales around the world and has saved countless lives and limbs around the world as well. They're now working on wound vac 2. Another great story, Dr. Steve Peters and his colleagues are lung doctors. You may not be aware of this, but children and adults today still die of asthma. I don't think that's commonly known. It's because they become refractory to the standard drugs that are used, and it takes about 10 years to get a new drug into the pipeline. Steve and his colleagues asked a very simple question. And that is, can we use a drug that we use for chronic lung disease that's already on the market and use it to help these children and adults with refractory asthma? So they tested this drug, which you can read yourself there, in a trial that showed a very positive benefit. And within the next year, this became standard therapy for drug refractory asthma without any long FDA trials, et cetera. So that's an example of what's called translational research. This is actually my favorite example. I don't know if there are any physicians in the audience, but it's well known that African Americans have about a 4-fold increase of kidney failure compared to Caucasians. When we were all in medical school, we were taught, and it was still in textbooks until a year or two ago, that the reason for that was that African Americans had a much higher rate of untreated high blood pressure. And that's what led to the kidney disease. Turns out to be incorrect. African Americans, most of the risk of them getting kidney disease is conferred by a gene called ApoL1 that our kidney group discovered several years ago. And if you're African American and carry this gene, you have a 10-fold higher risk of getting kidney failure even with normal blood pressure. You get high blood pressure because of the kidney disease, not the other way around. So Steve and his colleagues are trying to identify what's called the protein product of this gene, hoping that it can be a drug target for prevention. And that's very, very exciting work. One interesting thing about this gene anomaly is, well, why would this be passed on if it caused such damage? It turns out that this gene in Africa protects for sleeping sickness. Just like the sickle cell gene protects from a type of disease that's found in Africa. So this gene, ironically, occurred evolutionary because it was protective in Africa. But then you're now in the US, and sleeping sickness is not a risk, and you live a little longer, and this gene kicks in and causes kidney damage. It's a fascinating story. Now, this is the sort of the last concept I want to touch on, and that's the commercialization of technology. Now, we do not commercialize products predominantly to make money, although that's a really cool outcome. But the real reason we're engaged in commercialization is we're not a freestanding research institute. As far as we're concerned, unless our discoveries actually get into patients and improve health, we haven't finished what we started out to do. And so actually for some time now, and I can't claim credit for this, Wake Forest has had a very, very active what's called technology transfer operation. It led to the wound vac and a lot of other commercial successes. But it kind of went along at a certain, what I would call, university pace, not at a corporate pace. So we've taken this whole chain, of that you go from an eye development to actually doing very complicated trials with the FDA trials and actually getting to the point where you have a product in patients. It can be a 7 to 10 year cycle, and we're trying to shorten that. And we're doing that by taking all the different steps where we're scattered between the university and the medical center and put them together and running it under the leadership of Dr. Eric Tomlinson, who's been the CEO of 3 biotech companies. And with apologies, not a university professor. He thinks like a business guy. He thinks about getting these things to market quickly. Eric has 3 divisions. One is the actual commercialization. We've also taken many of our research programs, like our animal facilities and very sophisticated scientific equipment, and made them available under contract for actual corporate R&D research with Merck and companies like that. So that's become an important part of our business. And lastly, we're managing the roughly 200 acres of downtown real estate in Winston-Salem that is, we now call Wake Forest Innovation Quarter. Commercialization just this last year really picked up. We basically doubled the number of total deals we were doing, started 3 companies, filed 19 patents, 12 of which were issued by the U.S. Patent Office. That was roughly double what we were doing under the prior model. I'm going to end with talking about Wake Forest Innovation Quarters, and those of you who aren't familiar with that eastern part of Winston-Salem, right at the intersection of 52 and Business 40, it was R.J. Reynolds properties that had been vacated many years ago, an old cement plant. It was not a very pretty front door, at least 10 years ago. We're now taking all of the vacated RJ properties and using historic tax credits, stripping them down and turning them into world-class biomedical research buildings at about half the cost that it would normally take. We're also taking some of the other properties. This is an old power plant and stripping out all the interior. This is going to be converted into mixed-use entertainment space for Winston-Salem. And the properties I was referring to earlier are up in the right-hand corner of your slide. Pointer doesn't work too well, but all that brown in the middle used to be vacant, declared land with an old cement plant, and that's going to be now about 30 acres of very developable land that will also be used for some research, but mainly mixed-use functions in the future. This is moving so quickly that we think there will probably be about 3,000 employees down there by the end of 2014, and this has largely been done with other people's money, largely federal money and state money that we brought in through matching grants and things of that nature. And we think it's really going to totally change the ecosystem in downtown Winston-Salem. So let me just close with this slide, because I mean, for many of us who are in this particular business, this is not just the future, this is a future that's rapidly approaching. And in many diseases today, you come in and you have a certain problem, and your physician's going to evaluate that and say, well, based on my experience, based on the experience with 1,000 people, I read that in an article, I think I'm going to try drug A. The future is using an understanding of your own genetics and your own what's called proteomic structure. The right drug, right treatment will be selected for you without any trial and error. And we're already there in some areas that are listed on the slide. And that's the true value that I think we hope to bring to Western North Carolina. I'm very grateful to be here today, and thank you, John, for the invitation. Thank you.